Hey everybody, welcome back to the Grognards Corner, and we are in the second part of our look at Berlin 1945 from Taktyka and Strategy, the Polish game company. Wanted to go over a little bit of how combat works in the game, because as we all know, combat tends to be kind of the core of any game system. Right now we're looking at kind of the southernmost flank of the map board down here, and I believe this was the first Ukrainian front that had this sector of responsibility. We're into the second turn of the Soviets, and the first turn went kind of poorly for the Soviets. Not realizing exactly how the combat modifiers worked, how the combat results table worked. I didn't realize how poorly 8 regiments of infantry crossing the Oder River attacking, fortified German infantry in a city was going to be, but I did find out. So it seems the first turn is a lot of maneuvering and positioning of the Soviets to get across the Oder River, to start maneuvering and start getting into position to attack German frontline fortified units. So yeah, some of my attacks went really, really bad with the Soviets. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a look at some combat here in the southern sector. And what we've got is we've got 2 stacks of cavalry from here. Now these guys actually show up as reinforcements on the first turn, and they spent the first turn coming along and they crossed the Oder River. The nice thing about non-motorized units is that they can cross the Oder River. Huge movement penalty to do it. It's like +3 movement points to cross over, plus whatever terrain they're entering. If you notice the 2 numbers, just go over this real quick. The red number is their combat value. The blue number is their movement value. So Cav is pretty good. They got six movement points. Infantry has 4 movement points. This is kind of universal. If you take a look at most infantry units, you're going to find most infantry units have 4, and you're going to find most mechanized motorized units have 7. Let's take a look at, we got a Stug unit there, movement 7, Stug unit there, or actually it's a Panzerjäger, movement 7, bunch of movement infantry, infantry movement 4s, mechanized motorized. The only difference is the kind of is the little tractors for the artillery. They are movement 3. But what we're doing is we're focusing right here. So the Soviet these Guards cavalry unit went ahead and crossed the river, and they're in position to attack this little German 391st Division. Or regiment sitting in that town. And so let's go ahead and take a look at exactly how that works out. Now, combat in this game is compulsory. If you're stacked next to somebody, you have to attack them. Excuse me. The only difference is if your unit's in a fortified hex, then you don't have to attack anybody that's next to you. But aside from that, all combat is compulsory. So these 2 units are going to have to attack this German unit. And basically all it is a matter of adding up all your combat factors. So we got 3 units and 3 units stacked in each hex. Now you can have up to, they call them combat efficiency levels, but in reality we all know them as steps. Full strength, flip it over to the half strength. It's step losses. Everybody knows step losses. But for S&T purposes in this systems, they're known as combat efficiency levels. You can have up to 8 combat efficiency levels worth of units in a hex. So basically, we've got 1 full strength, 2 full strength, 3 full strength. So that's 6 CELs in that hex. I could actually basically 4 full strength units per hex. So what we got here is we got 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. So we got 24 attack factors. We compare that to the 3 combat factors that the infantry has, and basically break it down into your basic ratio. The nice thing about this is you round up. So 24 to 3 would fraction down to 12, 1.5 to 12, which would be 2 to 12, and then 1 to 6 odds. So we're looking at 1 to 6 odds, and that's before any column shifts or combat shift modifiers, as the game calls them, takes place. Now, some of the one of the big combat shift modifiers that there are front regimental units that are stacked together get bonuses. Like, for example, this is with the 33rd and the 33rd. If you have 3 of those type of units stacked together, and for every 3 you have stacked together, you get a +1 column shift. Unfortunately, all these Guards cavalry do not have a parent unit, so there's no column shifts for that. And if we'll take a look, this unit is in a city in the hills. Now, the rules aren't real specific that if combat modifier or combat shifts stack for multiple terrain types. I'm going on the assumption that it does because, you know, it's tough tacking into hills, it's tough tacking into a city, it's even tougher tacking into a city with hills. So go ahead and take a look at the terrain influence chart. Now, this is an older version of the terrain effects and terrain influence chart. If you notice, there is still some Polish on here. I have gotten the most recent version of the rules from Waj, and those have been taken care of. And I'm working on getting the non-motorized changed over to combat shift modifiers, because that's what that's supposed to be right there. So, anyways, you got clear, hills, forest, city, town, main route, secondary road, Oder River, stream, swamps, meds, Berlins, highways, and of course all their movement, you know, for motorized, and they break motorized down to tracked and half-tracked, and then non-motorized, and then the column shift modifiers over here. So basically we're fighting in hills in the city. So we'll take a look at the hills. Hills is +2, and we're fighting in a city, which is another +1. So a grand total of +3. So we're looking at 6-to-1 with 3 column shifts, which brings it down to 3-to-1 odds. Now, you may think that's all the modifiers there is. For column shifts, that's true. There is one other modifier you always kind of got to be aware of when you're doing combat, and that's leader influence. We've got a headquarters unit right here. And if a friendly unit is within the headquarters radius of a friendly headquarter, it gets to shift the dice roll 1 point in their favor. Now, it's different for the different nationalities. Pretty much everybody has got a command radius of 4. Soviets and the minor nationalities have a command radius of 3. So we're taking a look at Germans. Germans have a command radius of 4. It's within 2 hexes, so he's within the command radius. So he will give a +1 dice modifier shift when we roll the dice. So we're looking at 6-to-1, shifted down to 3-to-1 for the column shift modifiers, and then a -1 on the dice roll. So go ahead and roll the dice. Let's see if I can do this without totally messing everything up. Take a look at my handy-dandy little dice cup. Some people complain about my dice cup. I like my dice cup. All right, so we've got an 8. And that's a -1 for the leader column shift to a 7. And all combat is done on a 2d6 scale. So we take a look at 3-to-1 odds. And we take a look at the 7 column. And we have a /B2. Now, everything before the slash is what happens to the attacker. Everything after the slash is what happens to the defender. Now, it's a little bit confusing if you don't speak Polish and don't understand that B actually should just mean, it should, for the English audience, say D for defender. The D2 means it must retreat by 2 hexes. If you take a look, there's several different effects that could happen. So say we haven't rolled an 11 and gotten a -1 and a B1 -1. Well, if it's a -1, that's a flat-out step loss. You have to take that as a step loss. If it's a B, or for example, D for defender, you have to take a retreat, and then there's a -1, which means you also have to take a step loss. So we got a B2, which is a defender. And so the defender has to take 2... or has to retreat 2 times. Now, he can break that up any way he wants to. He can actually retreat 2 hexes. He can take 1 step loss and retreat 1 hex. Or if he wanted to, he could, you know, take 2 step losses and completely eliminate the unit. But in this case, I think from the way it looks like and what is back here, we need to preserve the German forces as much as possible. So we're just going to retreat back 2 hexes, and we're going to be retreating into this hex with the leader and an artillery unit, which could have actually shifted the odds, but oh well, I forgot about that. And it is a fortified hex. Yes, those, the red and black hexes are fortified, improved positions, very, very bad, nasty to try to attack into. So he retreated his 2. Now, the attacker has the option of follow-up, and so we are going to follow up there. And he is going to follow up there. And that, boys and girls, is pretty much the basics of how combat works. Pretty straightforward system. The only thing you got to take into account is all the combat shift modifiers that you're going to run into and any dice roll modifiers that you're going to have to run into. So far, this is the biggest advance that we've made. 2 hexes is the most that the Soviets have been able to advance so far this game. But it's early in the turn. And we are going to go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and continue playing out the turn. And I will be back in the future with more videos on gameplay. Thanks for watching, everybody. Real quick, there's one thing that I did forget, that anytime you retreat, the unit that's retreating has to roll a disorganization check for every hex they retreat, and it's based on nationality. So for the Germans, we're looking at, we're not SS, so they are other Germans because they're standard Wehrmacht. So we're looking at a disorganization roll of 11 or better for each hex. It retreated 2 hexes, so we have to roll 2 times. And there's a 6 and no disorganization. And for the second hex it retreated, there's a 12 boxcars. It will disorganize. Basically, what disorganization means is that their attack and movement is halved, and they have to spend 1 full turn without doing anything to get rid of that disorganization marker. I'll go ahead and throw that marker on the unit, and I will continue the gameplay. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you later.